3 weeks before my visa expired, I just get a call from them saying they now have an opening for a junior engineer role. Before you know what was going on, I ended up putting in an application for Tier 2 visa. Currently, I work as a network engineer, although more specifically cloud network engineer, because most of the work I do now are related to deployments in the cloud. But before that, I was also working as a network engineer, and I was doing somewhat more traditional networking. I was doing that job because I got sponsored by a company that was offering primarily network services. How I got the job, it all started from my doing a master's at Sussex University in Brighton. I came into the UK, and then as I got close to the end of my program, they're looking for, jobs. If I'm honest, at the time, I was looking for something that would do a bit short term because I had been looking for the sponsorship jobs during my program, getting nowhere. I applied for jobs and jobs and jobs, and I got rejections to the point I opened a separate email address just so I could be using that email box, job applications, and then any rejections can pile up there while I focus on my primary email because it was getting a bit difficult reading them in the midst of everything else I was doing. So I got the job with this company, and when I got the job with them, it was part-time because I actually got the job with them just after I finished my second term exams, but I still had my dissertation. So I was still restricted to 20 hours per week, for example.
So what was the role when you got the job?
It was a very junior role. It was a very junior role at the time. I was starting off as just a service desk administrator, which was primarily, taking calls, doing basic fixes for people, resetting their passwords, just guiding them how to do basic troubleshooting when they have problems. So yeah, it was a very junior role at the time. I started off with them. Again, I was doing it part-time because I was still restricted to 20 hours per week because I had not finished my master's program. And then when I finished my master's, it worked out well because they had a few more hours that I could take on if I wanted. Probably worth mentioning, these were night shifts as well. So you can imagine. It's normally one of those ones where if there's an opening, there's an opening because people can either work night shifts or they can't. It's not the type where, actually I can work during the day, but please let me start at 9 or let me start at 10 instead of starting at 9 or 8 when everyone else does. No. And we were tied to this contract where we needed to cover the night shift for a fixed number of hours. So there was little wiggle room.
Martin, if you don't mind, so if you were still doing your program and you were managing to do some hours of night shifts, how were you able to juggle both of them?
It was, now that I think back, I find it interesting, but at the time it didn't feel that much of a challenge, if I'm honest. I think there were two factors. One, I wasn't necessarily going to class anymore. It was just my dissertation I was doing because I got the job just second term exam. So I wasn't tied to going to class. I had to meet up with classes very early in the morning. So I could kind of build my schedule for my research for my dissertation around knowing what hours I was going to work for that day and then just build the day after that. But the second thing was for whatever reason, I don't struggle to stay awake through the night, and it doesn't overly affect my performance the next day. I'm quite very comfortable staying up till 1 or 2 in the morning. So one option for my shifts were 7 in the evening till 2 in the morning. Or the alternative was from 1 in the morning till 8 in the morning. That was obviously the tougher one, but no, ultimately, I think the main reason was because I didn't have to go to class and I just needed to make out time to do my research.
Yeah.
So it worked out well.
Okay.
Yeah, after I completed my dissertation, I was able to get a few more hours with them. At this point, even while I was working for them part-time, I kept looking for sponsorship opportunities. I studied, I guess going back a bit again, I studied digital communication systems and business management. So I think the nature of that course allowed me to apply to a range of different industries. But still, I just wasn't getting anywhere with any of them. So at some point, I asked my employer, who was still employing me at that time, somewhat on a part-time basis, because even though I was getting more hours, I wasn't on a full-time contract. I wasn't a staff. So, I asked them, would it be possible to get me sponsored? Because that's the only way I can continue to work beyond 5 months after I completed my dissertation. The way the student visas were obviously tied at the time, I would have finished my dissertation somewhere like in early September. Graduation was January, and I needed to leave the UK at that time because my student visa would expire after that.
Yeah.
They were upfront with me, and they said, unfortunately, they can't sponsor. One, the role I was on was a very, very junior role. Not something they would see enough reason to sponsor for, to be honest. Secondly, at the time, they were not even on the list of sponsors or list of employers that were able to sponsor people to remain.
So they didn't have the license or certificate to sponsor. No.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, not at the time. This was a small company. I think, thinking back now, I was the 21st employee, and I say I was the 21st employee based on a number you get as an employee when you get there. But it didn't even mean that at the time we were actively 21 there. Yeah. There were some people that had worked very briefly and left. So yeah, it was a small company, and I don't blame them. They had no reason to have tried to get like a sponsorship license for their size at the time.
But Martin, that raises a question that I'd like to ask you. So, given that you were trying to get sponsored, like get a job that sponsors a visa, did you know that this company didn't or couldn't sponsor your visa before you got that job with them? Because I asked this because there is a very common advice there saying, if you're applying to a company, you should look at that list of companies that sponsor visa. Check if that company is in there. So did you have any idea whether they sponsored the visa or if they could sponsor visa before you got the job?
At the time, honestly, no. And what you mentioned there is definitely an advice I would leave to anyone listening to this now. Keep an eye on that list. But again, like I said, I got this job looking for a part-time job. I just wanted something to be doing after I had finished my term, because I knew I still had dissertation, but I wasn't going to be consuming my time all day. So I just felt, look, get a job where you can be making a bit of extra money, get a bit of work experience, and then use, that work experience as that extra on your CV while you continue looking for a job to sponsor you. Yeah. My mind was never on this company being the one that I was going to work for. Sponsorship.
Yeah, so I think that sounds like a very, in addition to the advice for people to check that list of sponsors or list of companies that can sponsor the visa, I think, would you agree that if you don't get a job in an organization that is on that list, but you got a job in another organization where they may not even be sponsoring you, but you're getting the skills that might get you sponsorship. If you get that, it's something that you should take. Would you agree, Martin?
I would. And again, it doesn't need to be just work experience plays a huge role when you're looking for a job. There's some employers that, it's crucial for them to know that you have some level of work experience, one in that field, and if possible in the UK.
Right.
So that was one of the reasons why I took on that job. And when I was looking for a part-time role, again, you will note I didn't look for a job in one of these areas where nothing wrong with those sectors, but a lot of times you can easily get a job and you can get as many hours as you want. If you wanted to do some care work or you wanted to do some cleaning, that kind of stuff. No.
Yeah.
I was quite intentional about finding something professional, something I could easily put on my CV and then look for another job that I can say I might not have the exact skills you want for this new job, but what I've learned in this past job where I have some experience, it keeps me in a good position to quickly build up. But yeah, I definitely agree with what you said. Even if you can't find one yet, it makes sense to get one if you can beforehand. But try and just make sure that it's something that you can use as a building block to where you're trying to get to, rather than just going for any job that just gives you a pay slip at the end of the month.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant advice, Martin. Sorry for cutting in. If you continue the story,
it's useful stuff.
So you finished your dissertation and then you asked for sponsorship. They said it was too junior; they couldn't sponsor and stuff.
Yeah, and they weren't even on the list at the time. Now, admittedly, I think they were intentionally planning to get themselves on that list because they felt that they were a small company, and that had its own way of making it difficult for them to recruit because they were in Brighton rather than a place like London, for example. It was an hour away. So if people could get a job in Brighton, might as well get one in London that is a bit, just about an hour away, get more pay. But because they were competing in the tech industry, I think they considered that their size was affecting their potential to pull local talent or to convince local talent. They couldn't obviously match that in London, for example. So I think they wanted to also sponsor to see if they could get people from abroad. So in many ways, it worked out well. I'd call that one grace because they were planning to do that, even though it wasn't specifically for me. I mean, the story can really extend because a lot of different funny things played up in between. But sometime in January, because at this point it's January, I'm getting close to the end of my STEM visa, still no job to sponsor me. So at this point, I'm really getting ready to. In fact, at this time, I had changed my focus from applying to jobs in the UK because I felt even if I could get a job in the UK, the amount of time to process any paperwork for sponsorship, there wasn't going to be enough time for me to complete that whole process before my visa expires. So I stopped applying to jobs in the UK and started focusing on applying to jobs in Nigeria.
Because you were going to go back to Nigeria if you didn't get a job in that month.
Yeah. That was my only option. Staying in the UK illegally was not an option for me. And didn't plan on going back to school for anything, for example. So I'd made up my mind. Okay, ready to go.
Yeah.
I'll say about 3 weeks before my visa expired. So this would now have been like the second week, January. I just get a call from them saying they now have an opening for a junior engineer role. So I was a service desk administrator, and they said they just had an opening for a junior engineer role. They talked me through the role, told me what some of the expectations would be, and skills I would need to build up if I would be able to take on the role and hold the role. They were offering it to me now. It didn't mean that it was guaranteed. I still need to go through probation. If I performed well, fine. If not, good luck. So, but coincidentally, and going back to this because it's a bit of an advice, while I was doing my service desk administrator role, night shifts, there were some nights where it would be very quiet. You get one call or two calls through the almost 7 hours that you're working.
Right.
They're studying for CCNA, my Cisco certification exam. Because even though they had said they couldn't sponsor me, I felt one way or the other, I could put this company's name down under my work experience.
Yeah.
So for the next Cisco-related job that I'm looking for, if I have this background experience with this certification, it will help.
Yeah.
They're working towards Cisco certification. I passed my first exam before then, and they didn't even know that.
Right.
So when they called me, they gave me some of the things that they would be expecting me to do in that role, and I was going to actually even mention, oh yeah, by the way, I've actually gotten this Cisco certification. That put me further in good stead.
Yeah.
But long story short, I was called into the office. They talked me through what would be required. Everyone obviously knew that the time was short, so needed to push through the application very quickly. And then got going. But before you know what was going on, I ended up putting in an application for a tier 2 visa, and eventually I got it. It was quite difficult at the time, to be honest, because I was applying So I came into the UK in 2012. Again, this is just me going back a bit, somewhat related to the skilled worker visa. I came in 2012, and it was in 2011 that they stopped the post-study work visa, allowed people remain in the UK for 2 years after their program.
So it came in just at the perfect time to not get
perfectly wrong time. Yeah, at the perfectly wrong time. Yeah. So I think that introduced two challenges. Not only did it mean you couldn't stay back as a student, but for employers, it was also like a new territory for them.
Yeah.
They didn't really know what to do with people that had just finished their program, might not have any work experience.
Yeah.
So you can't blame them. Employers have a lot going on. They're going to be paying you a decent salary. So if I can avoid taking a gamble, I will. So it made it very difficult if there were not a lot of them that were willing to sponsor.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it ended up just being a huge miracle for me. But yeah, that was how I ended up getting sponsorship with this company.
No, that's very encouraging, Martin. So something to take away from here, even though I don't know if you probably have thought about it, Martin. So you were doing a job that you took on during your master's, during your studies. It was part-time. You were even doing like night shifts. It was a very junior role. It wasn't a role that anybody was going to look at sponsoring. But while on that role, first of all, you did right by the employers. I want to believe that if you did not, like if you weren't doing a good job, whatever the job that was given to you was, they wouldn't consider you for that role, that opening when it came up. And then secondly, while you were doing your night shift, you were studying because you had some gaps, so you could study for your CCNA. And then when that opportunity eventually came, you were prepared to take that opportunity. So that strikes me as something that we should also, just summarizing it in that way, so two things there, not to look down on whatever opportunity you have been given, whatever you find your hands to do, whatever your hands find to do it exceptionally well. And then secondly, while you are on the journey to where you want to go, you've not arrived at your destination, but you can keep preparing yourself, keep equipping yourself with those tools that you will need for where you are heading to. So I thought I'd draw that out, Martin, and it's very good that you did that.
You did well to draw that out. So I think it's important to emphasize that. And again, it's not to kind of put more caps on my head or anything, but I think it's just important because I think that some of those things I wasn't doing consciously. I was obviously studying consciously, but I wasn't believing that they would sponsor me. I had asked if they were going to sponsor. I said no.
Yeah.
I was now doing this for the next opportunity I was hoping for.
Yeah.
But more than that, the first one you mentioned about whatever you put your hand to do, you do it well. And I was just trying to be diligent because I was contracted to work, even though it wasn't full time.
Yeah.
So it's important to know that I wasn't the only one that was working this night shifts.
Yeah.
But it wasn't everyone on the night shifts that got offered this new position.
Yeah.
I was the one that was called up. So, like you said already, no need to
Martin, take some credit. Come on, take some credit. It's okay.
Yeah.
Right. So I think there are two questions on my mind. I hope I finish it just at two. So the first question would be, if someone wanted to, someone who is a student now, who's finished, an international student, or who has graduated and is looking for a job, and wants to do the kind of job that you are doing now, today, your job today. I know you've moved, like you've kind of grown and transitioned from one job role to another. But if someone wanted to be to do the kind of get a job in the field where you are working, what kind of tools or what kind of skills could they be acquiring to get them ready to do that? How can they land a job in your area?
It's it's a good question to ask. It's crucial to also understand. So I regard myself as being in the IT field, correctly so. Having worked in that field for a good number of years now, I consider IT to be, in many ways, the great equalizer, or the one that is just neutral. You don't have to have had any specific degree from university to get into IT. A lot of the guys I worked with in my first job, when I became that junior engineer, a lot of the guys that were my seniors and had the title senior engineer did not go to university. Some of them went to college, some of them did A-levels, stopped there and went on. Yet they were very well my seniors in that role. To answer the question, I would say a lot of massive tech companies, then you find, companies that use some of their products. So I mentioned Cisco certification. Cisco is probably the most popular vendor in core networking. Almost any organization you go to, they use Cisco equipment.
Right.
So my advice to anybody would be start to find out the certifications that are most sought after. If it's IT you want to do, you want to do networking, for example, find out what are the going Cisco certifications that get you in the door. You want to do a cybersecurity. Cisco is good for cybersecurity as well. The other companies, Checkpoint, Palo Alto Networks, all these are different vendors that when you learn how to use their products, you can go into interviews feeling more confident because you can tell them, look, I know how to use these products. And then a lot of these vendors, they're also such that using your own home PC, again, this goes back to why I always consider IT to almost be like some kind of equalizer. There's so much you can do without necessarily having to pay exorbitant amount of money for a license.
Yeah.
There are options to set up like simulations of these products, your own laptop or your own PC at home. You go on, maybe go to one of these websites, buy a lab, a full lab that takes you through a range of exercises and tests and quizzes, and use that to just kind of push yourself, test yourself. So I'll just start from there. Certifications mean a lot in IT. Find the ones that are going. More than getting the certificate, though, try and get some practice. Apart from passing the exam, try and get some practice. If you can't get it through actual work experience because you're looking for the job, try and set up a lab at home. You just need your laptop, one or two software, and you can actually start putting yourself through some good tests.
Yeah, no, that's great, Martin. I'll ask, maybe this will be my last question, but it just came to my mind now because you talked a lot about network, and I was thinking networking. No pun intended, but what do you think? I didn't think about this question before this interview, but what role do you think networking among humans, plays in getting jobs in the UK? And I asked that because it might have been a different story for you because you've told us how you started working as a junior in a junior role.
Yeah.
But in the position where you are at, I believe you probably you have some visibility on how recruitments are done, even if you're not on the panel. And knowing what you know now, what role do you think networking or knowing people plays in getting jobs? What would you say?
It's crucial. I would say it's crucial. It's very crucial. In two different phases. The first phase is in knowing what's useful. Again, tech is just so vast. There are thousands of software, thousands of versions of those software. There's just a lot. So getting, talking to people that can tell you, actually, this is where people are going now.
Yeah.
This is what has been around for years. And that's what people have been doing for a while, but it's looking like this is where things are going.
Right.
Talking to the right people, That's where you find that kind of information. Then the second stage is in actually getting yourself into the door. At the end of the day, employers want someone that can do the job. Right? Yeah. If you know someone that is able to just get you on the phone to the recruiter and then you're left to prove yourself, it's better for them. And I have seen firsthand, recruitment process is a bit of a pain point for organizations. It's something they would rather not spend a lot of time doing. Yeah. So if they someone in the organization and get them someone they know, and to one extent, or at least just help them do that initial sifting and then bring someone in that they can do and improve, it helps. So by knowing people in that field that, you can occasionally say, look, do you have anything going at the moment? And the current role I'm in, I found out about it through someone that I met at like a networking event. It was like a summit where some of these vendors that I mentioned earlier, they were advertising some of their products. So I met someone there for the first time. We got talking, and I just kept in contact. 3 or 4 years later, I just get a message saying, what have you been up to? By the way, I'm no longer with that same organization. I'm in this new place now, and there's some of the stuff they're doing that's very interesting. You probably want to check it out. Yeah. Conversation built up from there. Still had to go through the interview, but I just would not have known. Yeah. Just thing that would have made me know. And I don't regret the move at all. So not to drag it for too long, but I think for those two reasons, it's very crucial.
It's very crucial. Yeah, no, I agree with you, Martin. Thanks for sharing that. Because in fact, just to add to what you said about companies being open to people giving CVs to them, it's just what it is, right? And companies even incentivize their employees by paying them. It's called a referral bonus, right? Some companies pay £2,000, £500, £3,000, even more to their employees that refer people to them, because, like you said, it helps them solve a lot of all that sifting through thousands of CVs and just get the right one. I mean, you still have to prove yourself, but at least you're in the door. Okay.
100%. And that referral bonus they're giving you as an employee to get someone in is only a fraction of what they're having to pay agencies sometimes to bring people in that are probably not what they were looking for in the first place.
Okay, Martin, any final words to whichever random person is looking to get a job that sponsors their visa in any field at all? Any final words to such a person?
Yeah, I would just say, again, almost similar to some of the things we had pulled out earlier. The start might be very tough. Mm-hmm. I mean it when I said I opened a separate mailbox to start using as my contact information for applications, because I was pushing out applications and the rejections were coming back just as fast, honestly.
Right.
So I had to block that out. Be flexible. You don't have to get a job in the same field where you went to school. Yeah. And keep yourself open and adaptable to the kind of skills that might be required in a different field if that's where sponsorships are available. And then just be ready to work. Be ready to upskill, be ready to study, be ready to take certifications if required, because the pain points when you have to do some of those things, you only endure them at the initial phase. Then, as with most things, once you get into it, you just kind of almost get into a flow where you're having to learn. But it's not as difficult as it was when you were first getting into it. For someone that doesn't know what fields to consider, I would definitely say IT is a good space. I think I'll round up with that. IT is a good space because most times they're not checking for any specifics of what course you studied in university. A couple of skills that you might have just trained yourself to get. As you do the job, they're happy.
That's brilliant, Martin. And I hope people find all these insights you've shared very, very useful. But I'll end by saying thanks very much, Martin, for your time, and I'll catch up some other time.
Yeah, thanks for quizzing me.